And funny enough, I completely forgot that I wrote this in my review, but I wrote down, I want the cinematographer's floppy zombie dick in my mouth, please. This is how you shoot a film. I completely forgot about writing this, and I hope that everyone is gonna forget about it, even though the floppy zombie dicks were really entertaining to watch, especially in the action sequences.
Yeah, baby! Yeah. No! God, please, no! No!
Welcome back to Torn Apart, and as I promised a couple of weeks ago, we're gonna do something positive today. We're gonna be talking about the best movies of 2025. Of course, we're gonna be starting with a bit of a disclaimer. First of all, I've not seen every single movie that has come out this year.
Oh! Ew! Dude! What the fuck?
And the other disclaimer is that this is mostly gonna be the films that have impacted me the most. So of course, this is gonna be a very subjective video. Of course, I'm gonna try to give you as many arguments as possible for each film, telling you why I liked it and what it is about as well. But at the end of the day, this is not gonna look like your list. And actually, I really want you to comment down below what were your favorite cinematic experiences of the year. Let's give a look at the list of films that I didn't have the time to watch, and there are probably gonna be in my list at the end of the day. Like every single year, I end up changing and updating my list almost like a day after the release of the video, a week after, a month after. And this is why I also use my other video, my Oscars video, to talk about all of these films, all of these incredible performances, soundtracks, cinematographies, and other fun awards that I like to give. So of course, this video is not gonna be perfect, but it's a start. It's a start, and it's a good start for an end of the year as well. So the movies that I didn't have time to watch are Die My Love, Keeper, Avatar Fire and Ash, Marty Supreme, Hamnet, The Chronology of Water, Father, Mother, Sister, Brother, Sentimental Value, and Train Dreams. Let's start with number 20, and I feel like the first few films on my list are mostly gonna be incredibly fun films. And of course, a good time at the movies couldn't exist without Predator: Badlands. Badlands is directed by Dan Trachtenberg, and it's one of those films that I had very low expectations for. Even though I really enjoyed Prey when it came out on Disney Plus, I was sitting there being like, you never know. I know that this director has delivered. We got another animated, for example, Predator movie this year, which was also quite good, but you never know. You never know with Disney, you never know with blockbusters just in general whether it's gonna be cringy or not. Also this year we got the Alien Earth series as well. So at the end of the day, what was going to be the tone of this film? And if you'd like to know what it is about, just in case you missed it, cast out from his clan, a young predator finds an unlikely ally in a damaged android and embarks on a treacherous journey in search of the ultimate adversary. This is basically like a buddy cop science fiction adventure. This is for me the best kind of adaptation of a standalone Star Wars story that you could have ever made. Imagine just dropping a couple of characters in the middle of nowhere on a dangerous planet and you keep going. This also reminds me of other of my favorite science fiction movies, things like Pitch Black, for example, which has a very similar kind of pitch but completely different tone, because this is actually quite fun and quite funny as well. And to be honest, I thought I was gonna find it annoying because it has that classic Disney humor at the end of the day, and sometimes it lands, sometimes it's gonna make you eye roll until your eyes get stuck at the back of your head, but most of it I think works, and that depends on you at the end of the day, because if you wanted a Predator movie that is more horror-like, then this movie you're gonna find it incredibly annoying to watch. While if you like science fiction things like Guardians of the Galaxy, you're gonna like this as well. And if you want to see something new within the Predator franchise, this is probably the best adaptation that we've ever had, because even if you look at Predators, even The Predator, which came out a couple of years ago, those ones really didn't have anything new to add, and this one here actually does. And just because of that and the interesting links that they created with the Alien universe and the Weyland-Yutani company, I feel like there is a little bit of everything for everyone. If you're an Alien fan, if you're a Predator fan, if you just want to go to the movies and have fun, Predator: Badlands is the movie for you.
A second chance. Get to know me.
The next one also has some comedic things about it, but it's not 100% a comedy. It's one of those kind of cringe comedies where you don't really know whether you're supposed to laugh or find everyone pathetic in the movie. I'm talking about Friendship, directed by Andrew DeYoung. It's one of those movies that is very topical for 2025 because it's talking about how do you make friends as an adult man getting way too close to 30 or even like above 30, and you're a bit awkward and you have nothing going on for yourself, as in there's nothing that makes you immediately interesting and people are not like attracted by you. How do you do that? Like honestly, like I feel like we're talking a lot about men and women and their dynamics and the patriarchy and feminism. We're not talking about how things have changed also with the relationships between men and other men as well. And this movie was just fascinating to watch. And there is another one actually in my list which kind of takes this concept and turns it into something way darker, more psychological, where basically it turns into obsession but in a really like not fun way. My number 18 is gonna be K-pop Demon Hunters, and this was a huge surprise. I mean, not because it's a really good animated movie coming from Netflix, because we know that that is not a surprise. Look at the incredible stuff they've done across the years. If you just look at Arcane, if you look at even BoJack Horseman in the last few years, Big Mouth as well, they're really good with these kind of weird looking animated movies. And K-pop Demon Hunters is kind of like playing on the anime fans, of course, and it's kind of like putting things together that usually you don't see that much in Western animation anymore, but you see it way more in anime. Like the idea of like these teenage pop stars who are also fighting demons at the same time. It reminds me of other show like Gantry Chow, which I talked about at the beginning of the year as well. It was so incredibly fun and the music was so catchy. The animation, of course, is once again perfect and so fun, and it feels like it has way more energy than most of the Pixar and Disney movies that we see in the last few years. And there's nothing else I can say about it because, to be honest, I've already summed up the movie for you. But if you like animation, if you want to be surprised, and this is gonna be definitely your obsession of 2025. I remember it became so famous. I think it was re-released even in the States, like in the cinemas, just because of how popular it was. Next, we're gonna go into the horror genre, and as you know, most of my movies end up being horror movies in these best movies lists because I'm a huge horror fan, and those are the movies that end up actually like impacting me emotionally. They really like lead me into weird journeys, and there is this one movie called 28 Years Later which led us on a weird journey.
Brian, the things are something different. Oh, Brian, me from going lunatic. Falling up and down again.
I think it's been almost 20 years, if not even more, since the original came out. And to be honest, you had to swing really wildly. As in, this movie had to be weird. This movie had to give a new context to the zombies. Maybe something that resonates with how things are going right now. Maybe with even the pandemic or the political crisis that we're in. And it actually succeeded quite a lot. This is a weird film. This is also an incredibly good looking film. Like, to be honest, the cinematography, there are some moments where you can literally take a screenshot and use it as a screensaver on your computer, which is not something you can say about a lot of films just because it looks so vibrant and colorful. It's actually quite rare for zombie films when you think about it. There are not that many that exploit those kind of things. There is this kind of weird Walking Dead look that has become the look of a serious zombie film, and now it seems like no one is trying to do anything different, and this movie is actually doing something different. The performances are really good, especially the child who's playing one of the main characters in the film is incredible, and the alpha zombies as well are kind of cool to watch because they're so incredibly scary, and I hadn't been scared of zombies in a really long time. Talking about horror movies, let's talk about Osgood Perkins once again, who comes out with another movie. Maybe you've forgotten about it because it came out at the beginning of the year. Do you remember The Monkey? Listen, we don't really get that many kind of like horror comedies these days, and Osgood Perkins is actually really good at playing with tone. And The Monkey is one of those films that work perfectly, mostly because it ends up being quite scary, gory, the effects are quite insane, but it's also very camp and funny, which is something you could have said also about Longlegs, I'm pretty sure. But this one here, it's one of those films like Final Destination, for example, where you're sitting there being like, there is no way this is gonna get worse. And it just keeps escalating and escalating and escalating. And the performance by Theo James, who's playing the main characters in this film, is incredible. I would never have been able to tell you that the guy from Divergent from a couple of years ago would have been able to give us something this interesting to watch in 2025. But just in case you have no idea what I'm talking about, let's give you a little bit of a synopsis for the film. When twin brothers find a mysterious wind-up monkey, a series of outrageous deaths tear the family apart. 25 years later, the monkey begins a new killing spree, forcing the estranged brothers to confront the cursed toy. This was actually one of the first few horror comedies that I enjoyed since probably Malignant, and if you want to go even back, I would probably say something like Zombieland or Tucker and Dale vs. Evil. So if you like any of those films, you're gonna love The Monkey as well.
My most important project of my lifetime.
Our objective: disrupting, obstructing, impeding, crippling Corda's enterprise in any manner possible.
Get the hand grenades.
And number 15, I'm gonna be putting The Phoenician Scheme by Wes Anderson. And listen, I have an actual video talking about this movie here on how Wes Anderson basically never gets it wrong. You've got the perfect cinematography as usual, interesting and very clever color design, performances which are always surprising, and I feel like The Phoenician Scheme is probably one of his funniest movies since probably The Grand Budapest Hotel. And I also loved the political intrigues in the film. I love also how he's definitely bringing us back to the origins of filmmaking. There's basically some like magic effects in it, especially surrounding the character of the villain, who is played by Benedict Cumberbatch. And in case you'd like to say more, this is basically about wealthy businessman Zaza Konda, who appoints his only daughter, a nun, as sole heir to his estate, and he embarks on a new enterprise which soon becomes the target of scheming tycoons, foreign terrorists, and determined assassins. A lot of people, especially cinephiles, they've gotten a bit tired by Wes Anderson. Personally, it's never the case. Every single movie that he's made is at least interesting, not always, of course, entertaining, but at the very least, it's incredibly well shot, and it's something you could say about the greatest of them out there. If you think about Tarantino, if you think about Paul Thomas Anderson as well. And talking about switching tones one after the other, we're talking about Bring Her Back, which was one of my favorite movies of the year. I think it's number 14, if I'm keeping my count right.
We can bring her back.
It's directed by Michael and Danny Philippou, who you might know because of the movie Talk to Me or The Hand in France. I have no idea why they called it like that. It was really good. I feel like the ending maybe it feels a little bit rushed, but it's incredibly scary, it's incredibly tense, and there are some scenes which are gonna stick in your mind for a really long time, like some gore scenes. I actually have a colleague, a friend of mine, who told me that while that scene in the kitchen was going on, he literally just stopped the film and he couldn't keep going because it was too intense, and I completely agree with him. And you've got these two main characters, a brother and a sister, who basically end up in this foster home, and a couple of weird things start happening. It's probably not the most intriguing script ever, and you probably can tell what's going on from a mile away, but if you like things like Hereditary, this is gonna be your psychological trauma of the year without a doubt. And number 13, I'm gonna be putting Scott Derrickson's new film Black Phone 2.
Vengeance.
this is a movie that really surprised me. I recently bought Black Phone, and honestly, I didn't really love it that much. I think I gave it like a 3 stars out of 5 back when it came out. It was interesting, it was a fun kind of indie concept, but I was not expecting a second movie to actually improve on that concept so much. This is honestly the best A Nightmare on Elm Street movie we've had probably in the history of Nightmare on Elm Street movies. And a lot of people took that negatively, but you gotta remember that we haven't had a new film in that franchise in almost 20 years. A good film in that franchise, of course. So this is not a new concept, but it's a concept that hasn't been like explored in a really long time. Also, I'm a sucker for winter horror movies, and even if it's a winter camp fest horror movie, even more entertaining. I don't know, there is something about the cold which makes everything more scary. This is also why I hated the fact that it was not present in Until Dawn. If you've seen my other video on the worst movies of the year, you know what I'm talking about. The thing that I loved about this is though that Scott Derrickson loves the horror genre. You could really tell he's created a mythology around the character of the Grabber. He's turned it into a legend with this second movie, because I feel like in the first movie he already like started giving us a little glimpse of what could be. This one here went full Terrifier with it, and there is literally gonna be like cosplays of him maybe for next Halloween. The thing that really made me love this movie is mostly the cinematography, the way that they shot the dream sequences, which really feel like old found footage, kind of like VHS from the 80s, and I love that. Plus, it's a really colorful movie once again. I love what horror filmmakers play with color. It's so important. It brings us back to movies like The Shining, or also giallo movies like made by Dario Argento, for example, like Suspiria. I just miss color in horror movies, and this movie delivered on every single aspect. Incredible performances, incredible score and cinematography. And actually, if you want to talk about performances, we need to talk about Madeleine McGraw, who is incredible. She stole the entire show out of the feet of Ethan Hawke and the other guy who was there since the beginning, her brother basically. Incredible. Like honestly, I immediately put it down as the best performances of the year, because the movie was literally sitting on her shoulders, and without her leading and kind of carrying this story on her shoulders once again, this wouldn't have worked. Oh, I feel like we are in a roll talking about horror films, because the next one is once again a horror film. It's Weapons, directed by Zach Cregger. Who is the guy who you probably remember because he made Barbarian, which was kind of a shocker, right? To be honest, I was not a huge fan of Barbarian, or at least I really loved the first 2 acts of that movie, and then the final act almost becomes kind of cliche. When it comes to Weapons, I could actually say the same thing. I feel like the entire structure of this movie is a bit pedantic, because basically it's adapting that kind of Reservoir Dogs structure, where like you get the story from one character's perspective, and then another one, and then another one, until everything comes together by the end of the film. And this is interesting when you're watching the first time, but on a rewatch basis, you're sitting there being like, so this structure is kind of like delaying the fun. It's delaying anything that could happen in the third act of the film, and the reveals, the plot twists, of course. So it could become quite boring, I think, on repeated viewings, but as a first viewing, this was iconic, to be honest. So memeable, the idea of children like running away like that, you know, like in the street, being summoned by some kind of weird force of nature. And I don't want to spoil this movie too much. You just have to know that basically, like in the trailer, a lot of children end up disappearing exactly at like 2 a.m. in the morning. They all basically open the doors of their houses and they run away, and they're maybe never to be found. It turns out that actually all the children that are missing are just from one classroom, so the teacher kind of gets a lot of the blame. It's kind of like a huge analogy for school shootings and the idea of adults turning children into weapons and making basically communities hurt and turn on each other. This was a movie that was very America based, so maybe if you don't live in the States, you will not find it that relatable, but I really loved the idea of making children scary. It's something that it's been done in horror for a really long time. It has some incredible performances once again, especially by the child actors. To be honest, this year has been really good for child and teenager performances, but this movie here, if the children don't act well, it's not gonna work. Like, you're not gonna believe it, it's gonna become camp. But this movie is terrifying from the beginning to the end, and there is even like a scene in the third act of this movie where everyone at the cinema, because I watched it in Italy, weirdly enough, this summer, everyone at the cinema was just laughing out loud just because of the tension being released, you know, because there was this sense of dread that kept going and going throughout the entire movie, and then something, that kind of climactic thing finally happens, and you're there being like, wow, finally, we got there, and it was all worth it.
Alexi, have you slept?
I'll sleep when I'm dead.
I'd like not to die today, so maybe somebody else should be driving.
And number 11, I'm gonna be putting Thunderbolts * The New Avengers. I have another video talking about this film here, and this is probably the moment where you're like, oh, you put an MCU movie in your best movies of the year list? You're a nerd. You're a disgusting human being who doesn't watch anything but blockbusters. But listen, I actually have a big argument when it comes to this movie, why it worked and why I loved it so much. I actually think that this is not like your standard blockbuster. I think this is a really deep story talking about depression, and probably one of the best representation of the bipolar disorder that I ever seen, especially in a big movie like this one here. Of course, the effects are not perfect, and even the structure of the movie is not perfect, but they reveal that this is not actually a Thunderbolts movie, but it's a New Avengers movie, and how they changed the marketing campaign because of that. That was honestly one of the most astonishing things they've done since Infinity War. Personally, that's what I think. But what I loved about this movie the most is the characters. It's the fact that every single one of them has been experimented on. They're living with all of this emotional baggage that they have to carry behind them, and this team belongs together. Like, there is a reason why they come together to fight something or someone, because they need each other, and it's something that I never felt with the Avengers. It's something that I never felt with any other MCU team besides maybe the Guardians of the Galaxy, of course. That feeling that they're not coming together because they need to fight this threat that is bigger than them. They're coming together because they have no other choice. They need a family, they need friendship, they need all of these people to survive. They're basically stuck. It's all of these like B characters that you're not supposed to like, that you end up like relating quite a lot to, because at the end of the day, most of our lives end up being like B-side character stories. Like, let's be honest, we're not all gonna be Brad Pitt, we're not all gonna be presidents, we're not all gonna be massive CEOs. Most of our lives are just gonna be quite boring, and maybe our names are gonna be forgotten in a couple of generations. And this movie is about those people, and I found that really exhilarating. Let's get above the number 10, so starting from 10, of course, Zootopia 2. I mean, we're talking about friends sticking to each other and learning to exist in this world by being together. Zootopia 2 is the perfect movie for that, right?
You know, this is not your worst idea.
Wow, that was almost a compliment.
Your worst idea is what you did with your ears.
It's directed by Jared Bush and Byron Howard, and after cracking the biggest case in Zootopia's history, the rookie cops Judy Hopps and Nick Wilde find themselves on the twisting trail of a great mystery when Gary the Snake arrives and turns the animal metropolis upside down. And listen, this is the movie where I had really low expectations for, mostly because there is no way they're gonna do something as special as Zootopia. Well, they did it. There are actually a lot of Easter eggs in this movie, kind of like recontextualizing a lot of things that Disney has worked on. For example, any kind of movie where the animals were the main characters, I'm pretty sure there is gonna be an Easter egg in this movie here. Now, right now, I can't even remember all of them. Maybe I'm gonna show them to you like in pictures and stuff like that, like right here on screen, because there are so many of them, and this time around they're actually well integrated in the story, unlike the movie with Asha, for example, the movie Wish, which was one of those weird cash grabs, which was kind of like giving us all of these these winks and Easter eggs without giving us the meaning behind them. This movie here puts everything perfectly together. So it's a perfect Disney movie, but it's also a perfect continuation of that story that was set up in the first movie. I love these two characters. Like, I really love them. At some moments I want them to be together, like in a romantic ways, and at some moments I actually want them to stay friends forever, because when you think about it, there's not that many portrayals, especially in animation history, of friends sticking to each other. At least if you don't look at TV shows, because TV shows have a different way of building up tension just with the way that they're structured. But when you look at films, most of the films have couples in them, and very often straight couples in them. But this time around I would love for them to stay friends, mostly because it's good representation for people to know that men and women, or even different like races of animals, can be friends and there can be nothing else about it. I love the story mostly because it's very political, it's very complex, it's not one of those toned down stories. These are the movies that make me go, are you sure that Disney greenlit this? Because how can they make something so lifeless as Moana 2 and then they make something like this? I just love when there is that movie where everyone loves it and we all just kind of like get together in a warm hug of these beautifully made, like fan-made posters and drawings, and we share all of these gifts and we share all of these wonderful moments from the film. It's good, you know, it's good to have good things, because sometimes movies can be such a polarizing like force of nature where everyone is like, no, I love this, no, I hate this. And this movie, I feel like I've never met anyone who hasn't enjoyed it at some level, if you know what I mean.
Everything you've ever loved, everything you see. Every year that you live, that world will get bigger and brighter.
If you want to stay on the good vibes, let's talk about Mike Flanagan's new movie, Life of Chuck, which is number 9 for me on my The Best Movies list. To be honest, this movie grew on me. There are a lot of films which I immediately know that are gonna be on my Best Movies list. I just know exactly how I'm gonna rank them. But Life of Chuck, it's one of those movies where I came out of it being like, yeah, it was fun. And then the more you think about it, the more you're like, wow, that was a really incredible existential journey that made me hopeful about living life, hopeful about like going out in the world, meeting people, asking people to dance, taking chances when it comes to friends, when it comes to romantic partners, when it comes to my work as well. It's one of those films that is so incredibly positive, and that even though it's sad because it's making you realize that there are some things in the universe which no one can fight, and one of them is death, it's so heartwarming. It's one of those films that is gonna make you like smile and laugh throughout the entire movie. And of course, a really good performances by Tom Hiddleston, who kind of surprised me here because he's really used to giving us some more nuanced performances, and he plays more kind of negative characters. Well, Chuck here is probably the best human that you've ever met. And if you'd like to know basically what this movie is about, it's basically a movie that we're retracing what the loss of Chuck meant to a lot of different people basically around the world, and the idea that Chuck wasn't actually anyone that important. He wasn't like a big actor, he wasn't like this big like political person, this big singer, this big star. He was just a random person that some people loved, and they wanted others not to forget him. It really worked on me, and I'd like to know actually down in the comments if it worked on you as well, because I feel like a lot of people could be like, this is a bit too happy, almost like it lacks kind of nuance and it lacks things to talk about and discuss, because it's very straightforward at the end of the day, but it's also very beautiful. It's very beautiful as a story, and it's also very beautiful cinematography wise. But I'm not surprised, because Mike Flanagan is really good at telling these kind of sad but also happy and sometimes horrific stories. Number 8, I'm gonna be putting Nouvelle Vague, the new movie by Richard Linklater, who keeps surprising us year after year after year.
Jusqu'à ce que tu n'aies plus de souffle.
S'ils veulent la nouvelle vague, donnons-leur un raz-de-marée.
After writing for Cahiers du Cinéma, a young Jean-Luc Godard decides making films is the best film criticism, and he convinces the producers Georges de Beauregard to fund a low-budget feature and creates a treatment with fellow New Wave filmmaker François Truffaut about a gangster couple. The result is the movie Breathless, one of the first few features of the Nouvelle Vague era of French cinema. This is one of those films that actually gave me a new understanding of Jean-Luc Godard. For example, the idea that I always thought that the French New Wave was mostly created in opposition of Hollywood because it wanted to do something completely different. It wanted to create movies without looking at the lights, without looking at the script, without looking at the editing as well. Everything needed to be spontaneous, everything needed to come from the heart. Creativity for the sake of creativity. So there is a lot of pseudo-intellectualism and there is a lot of writing that has been done on the French New Wave. And when you hear people talking about French New Wave films, you can tell that they love talking about those films more than they like sitting down watching them in silence, if you know what I mean. And this movie here gave me a new perspective on it, where it was also about friends coming together, risking everything to make films, which is kind of like the most relatable thing humanly possible when you think about it. Like, if you're a filmmaker yourself, because I used to make short films, for example, and produce them as well when I was back in England, and there is this thing of like, you need to pull people towards you with your weird ideas, and all together you're gonna push this rock up the mountain to make this incredible short film, and you need to believe that it's gonna be the most incredible short film ever, otherwise it's so incredibly tiring. Like, making films, it's so incredibly tiring, it's so incredibly expensive as well, and it takes so much from you, like whether it's time, whether it's your will to live as well. Creating films is actually incredibly hard, and this movie proves that if you do it with the right people, people who understand you, the people who love you, the people who trust you, then it's gonna work out. And if you know me, you know that I hate biopics. In fact, very often they end up being on my worst movies like videos of every single year, but this one is one that works because you can tell that the intention is way more powerful than wanting to tell a Wikipedia-like story of the behind the scenes of the movie Breathless. Number 7, I'm gonna be putting The Naked Gun, which is directed by Akiva Schaffer. This is a movie I did not believe in. In fact, I put it, I think, in my list of movies to avoid for 2025.
Nobody messes with Police Squad.
I put it at the very end, so I was like, keep your expectations like low, like manage them, because at the end of the day there is no way that these like comedies made 20, 30 or 40 years after the originals end up working. I was wrong. Liam Neeson was born to be a comedian because he's so incredibly good in this film. Pamela Anderson is also incredibly fun, and there's been a couple of films which she's been in the last few years which have kind of given me a new perspective on her, and I'm really happy for her. But them together, they're such a good dynamic duo. I hadn't seen such a well-written comedy in a really long time. This was impressive, impressively fun, impressively stupid. It's one of those super bad like movies. It's not really a parody movie, and this is why I think it works, because it is of course built like a Naked Gun movie. At the beginning, these movies were actually parody movies like Airplane itself, but it's not the kind of parody movie like Epic Game, like The Starving Games, things that came out a couple of years ago which we want to forget. This is a comedy first, and it's parodying things like later on, kind of like Austin Powers as well. I feel like Austin Powers was a good comedy, a good film first, and then there was an underlying layer of parody of different subgenre characters, etc. Honestly, like, I haven't talked about The Naked Gun with a lot of people here in France. Maybe it's a very American thing, because I'm pretty sure that it worked quite well over there. But if you haven't seen it, check it out, because it's incredibly fun, and if you want to like sit in front of the TV and not think about anything, The Naked Gun is gonna be that kind of film. And it's really rare that I put comedies in my best movies list. It never happens, so that's why I really needed to recognize how good this is. Of course, when we're done laughing, we need to start crying and be scared again.
I've lost my mind.
If you love The Substance, this is The Substance of 2025. This is kind of like original, but also not original take on the Cinderella story. It's very, very topical. It's very topical because it talks once again about the length that women will submit themselves to be beautiful, to also attract the most disgusting men ever, just because other people tell them that they should. Because the prince in this movie, he deserves to be run over by a car. That's how annoying he is. But like, there's a lot of body horror going on in this film, and it's kind of fascinating how she always looked beautiful, and because of the journey that she goes in, she ends up destroying her body, her mind, her soul. And I love the fact that at the end of the day, she ends up choosing a different path. I'm not gonna spoil it for you, but it has a better ending, a more uplifting ending than The Substance did, because at the end of The Substance, you could be like, so there is no hope. Women are just gonna destroy their bodies for the patriarchy, for capitalism, and they're just gonna suffer and end up dying for it. While this movie here gives you like something different, a different interpretation, a different way of escaping maybe this like vicious cycle, and I loved it for it as well. It's one of those films that I really, really want to own on 4K as well. This tells you a lot. This tells you you're getting to the very, very top movies of the year, at least for me, because I actually don't buy that many 4K Blu-rays of new film. And number 5, we're gonna be getting Plain Clothes, which is a movie that I'm pretty sure not a lot of people have talked about. This is a very, very indie movie.
Is this hard for you? Keeping it a secret?
It kind of looks like it was shot from a security camera in like a supermarket or in a mall, if you want to be more precise. And it's basically about an undercover police officer in the 90s who receives an assignment to lure and arrest gay men. However, he's surprised to discover a scintillating connection with one of his targets, and as the secret connection deepens and internal pressure to deliver arrest intensifies, he finds himself torn between duty and desire. An incredible performance by Tom Blythe, an incredible direction by Carmen Emmy. This is one of those movies where you sit there being like, wow, so this is what it is really about. This is the power of indie filmmaking. Like, this is a movie that is so incredibly like brave, and it almost feels like a snuff film, as in it feels like something forbidden that shouldn't be seen. And I'm not saying this because it's voyeuristic or it's because it's traumatizing, but mostly because it's actually incredibly like touching and heartwarming, even when the subject matter becomes really, really dark and sad. I just love the way that this film is directed. It's like the definition of a perfect film for me. And if you haven't seen it, if you want that kind of like heartwarming but still sad experience, this is definitely a recommendation from me. Watch Plain Clothes.
You know what freedom is? No fear. Just like Tom Cruise.
And number 4, I'm not going to surprise anyone by saying that there is a PTA movie in this list, and it's my number 4, One Battle After Another. I put it in my list this high mostly because I'm not a huge PTA fan. So I think I've seen most of his films, and there are some that I've started and I couldn't finish because I was completely and utterly bored out of my mind. Inherent Vice and Phantom Thread are 2 examples of that, while his previous films I liked a little bit more, especially Magnolia was really cool, for example. I think Punch Drunk Love was fun as well. But just to tell you that PTA has never been like a god in my eyes. He's not like a master of filmmaking. He's really good, but there is a really huge list of really good filmmakers in the world right now, or even 20 years ago. So this is why he's so high, because this movie for me was perfect. This was everything that Eddington needed to be for me, as in you've got the tension, you've got the cinematography, you've got a movie that is so smartly written and directed as well. You've got a movie that is kind of summing up perfectly like the political climate we're in right now. That feeling of everything is gonna explode and you need to pick a side. This movie is that. DiCaprio is really good, but I feel like a lot of other actors like end up outshining him, because this is like the classic ensemble cast movie. I feel like even Benicio del Toro gives a more entertaining and weird performances than DiCaprio does. He's kind of like the vessel of this movie, as in he's going from one one little landscape to the other, and he's meeting all of these interesting people. Without him, the story would not exist, but at the same time, all of the people that surround him seem way more important than he is. It's kind of interesting that he ended up being the main character. He's kind of like the classic stoner character, kind of like the Big Lebowski as well. That idea of like, why are we following this guy? And he ends up falling into the weirdest and most incredible like places and action sequences. And this is a movie that will leave you at the edge of your seat. I'm pretty sure everyone has talked about it, everyone has seen it at this point. It's a huge recommendation from me, mostly because it's plot twist after plot twist after plot twist, and it never really feels like it's convoluted. It feels like it's flowing effortlessly for a movie that is so incredibly long, and it's really hard to do. So congratulations, you convinced me. You're a master filmmaker, PTA. And number 3, we're gonna be diving deep back into the indie filmmaking category and talk about a movie called Lurker, which is directed by Alex Russell.
Everyone around you, we all want the same thing.
What are you doing?
I just want it more.
This is basically Nightcrawler for the indie music, talking about being obsessed with influencers. It's talking about trying to make something out of your social media presence. This idea of turning every single moment of your life into content, into something that could bring you an incredible experience or even money, of course. And we've got a main performance from this guy here who is incredibly creepy. I had no idea he had it in him. He's kind of like the ultimate incel character. And his name is Théodore Pellerin, and he's a Canadian actor. I don't think I've seen him in other like main roles like this one here. Maybe I've seen him in like TV shows and other side character roles, but here he's scary. He's literally like a slasher villain. That's how intense his performance is. It's basically about a 20-something retail clerk who meets a rising pop star, and he takes the opportunity to edge his way into the in crowd, but as the line between friend and fan blurs beyond recognition, access and proximity become a matter of life and death. This was similar to the movie Friendship, which I talked about before. That idea of like trying to get close to someone but being unable to create like a genuine connection. This movie is like the horror version of Friendship. So if you want Friendship, that exact same concept but like make it scarier, watch Lurker without a doubt. One of the weirdest and scariest movie of the year as well. And I'm glad that it's in between two men as well, because I feel like this story has been adapted so many different times when it's men being obsessed with famous women, especially in real life as well, but not as much with men against men. So that is another cool thing to add to the list. Let's go to number 2. My number 2 is going to be something that is probably present on all of your lists.
Hey, I ain't mean to scare you. Thought y'all done forgot about me in here. Come on, open the door, let me on out of here.
Stay. It's you?
Of course it's me, open the door.
This is the most Tarantino-esque movie that I've ever seen. It's incredible. Like so many different switches of tone. The soundtrack is incredible. There is this musical moment in it which is fantastic. I have the 4K of that film as well, and I showed it to an Irish friend of mine and she loved it as well. A lot of incredible performances. Like, to be honest, this is another definition of a perfect film, which is also incredibly entertaining, because you can have perfect films which don't kind of fit within specific moods. You can show this at any moment of the day with any people, unless they don't like horror films, and they'll love it, because this is one of those movies that like are so dense, and they also talk about like these specific themes like segregation, like being an African American person living right now in the States, but also back then, and it's doing it like in such an effortless way. It's using also the vampire subgenre to enhance all of those themes, which is something that I love. This is exactly how you make a horror film about vampires or even about zombies. You need to recontextualize their presence within our universe, whether it's the past, the present, or the future. And this movie did it perfectly. This is probably one of the best vampire films I've seen, probably me personally, since 30 Days of Night, because I thought that that was a very, very interesting way of adapting the vampire story. But I'm pretty sure that you can come up with better, more recent movies as well. And now you're probably sitting there being like, if Sinners is not your first movie of the year, which movie could be better than Sinners? It's an animated movie. It's a French animated movie. It's a very colorful animated movie. It's an indie movie as well. You know, like I'm ticking boxes basically of like all of the things that kind of make me love something. It's talking about childhood and making friends and having like powers but not being able to fully control them because you're too young for them basically. It's a science fiction movie. I'm gonna give you the title.
Do you think wishes really come true? Like in fairy tales?
I don't know, Iris.
Argo!
But what's to stop you from trying?
One of the best movies of the year. It's directed by a guy called Hugo Bienvenu. It's probably the best animated movie you'll ever see. I think it got a Golden Globe nomination as well, and I think it should definitely win. Artistically speaking, it reminds me of a lot of other like comic books that were released in France in the 70s or even in the 80s. It also reminds me of The Inkles by Jodorowsky. It has that specific style, and it's very, very current because it's talking about how basically the Earth was slowly dying because of the climate change, and you've got this kid who is desperate about proving himself to his family, wanting to grow up too fast, making friends while he's basically time traveling accidentally as well. And it's so heartwarming. There is like a really cool robot in it, and I just really love when you have these AI robot representation in movies. Like The Wild Robot was once again one of my favorite movies in the last few years. This movie lets your imagination go free. This is why animation ends up being very high on my list as much as horror, because they tend to be the genres that actually try the weirdest things possible and they succeed or they fail miserably. Like I'm pretty sure at the end of the day the worst films of every single year are gonna be horror films, because people try their best to deliver something and sometimes it clashes completely and it doesn't work out. And I'm pretty sure that the worst animated movies, we don't even see them. They never see the light of day because it just takes too much time and effort to actually make an animated movie. But that was it. Those are my best movies of the year, my top 20. I hope you enjoyed it as well. I wish I could give you some honorable mentions, but we would be here forever. And I feel like this video is already quite long. If you like this video, here down at the bottom as usual, I'm gonna be putting my previous years of best movie lists. I think I've done quite a lot of them at this point, and it gets better and better every single year. And at the top here, the topic of my next video, which I already can tell you what it is about. It's gonna be the movies to avoid in 2026. I wrote down all of your comments from last year's video, and I'm actually gonna try to give you more arguments for each film. So we're literally going back and forth into hating things, loving things, hating things, loving things. So in 2 weeks approximately, so the first week of January if I'm not mistaken, we're gonna start hating on things again. Don't worry, we're gonna have some fun. Don't forget to smash that like button. Every single time that you do that, you make sure that the filmmakers around the world get your love.
Can I count on you?
Your friends get some love as well. Your family gets some love. Just spread the love. Just spread the love around the world. This feels like such a hippie thing to say. I have no idea why I said it, but at this point it's too late. We're spreading the love, baby. I'm Patrick, and this is Torn Apart.
Back in the 90s, I was in a very famous TV show.
Happy Christmas. It's Christmas. Merry Crisis. Merry Chrysler.
Da 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 da.